Your Marigold, last Cian Corla. I first wanted to begin by commending Deputy Donegal Leary for bringing forward this motion. I think it's hugely appropriate and the right time for us to be having a discussion about classroom sizes. It's one of the interesting tenets of coming from a local authority, a representative in a local authority, and then coming into the Dáil Chamber, whereas when you have a motion in Dublin, when you have a motion down on the Clara for the local authority, you take it very seriously. You know you're coming in, and the actions that you're intending to speak on, if it passes, you kind of have a suggestion that you'll see the implications of it at some point in the very near future. Where it seems to be in this House, you have a motion down on something very important. The government changes it, takes the spirit right out of it, and rather than actually dealing with the substance of what the motion actually asks for, the government use it as a chance to clap themselves in the back and say, sure, everything's grand, we'll keep on as we are. It's making no sense to me, but we'll keep on going. Education is phenomenally important, and a question that we should be asking, have all been asking ourselves over the last couple of months throughout the pandemic is, what does it take for us to value education? Actually value education? Does it take a pandemic? Does it take the health risks associated with large classroom sizes rather than the educational inequality of that for us to invest in our skills? Does it take 130 days of skill buildings being closed for us to recognise the role of our skills not only as sites for learning but as socialisation and of well-being? Does it take parents assisting with students? Does it take parents assisting with students learning at home for us to recognise the expertise and dedication of our teachers and our SNAs? Does it take a digital divide for us to realise that the material inequality affects educational chances? And I note that we talk about the digital divide because that one seems easy. That one seems solvable. I promise you, for the vast majority of kids who are on the receiving end of the digital divide, there's also an inability to access a table on which they could do their homework. They're waking up in conditions of overcrowded. Sometimes they're stepping in as caregivers to younger siblings as their parents went off and worked in retail. So we can talk about the digital divide, but what we're actually talking about, and we don't really say it, is we're talking about the poverty that's being experienced in households throughout Dublin, throughout Ireland, that is impacting upon educational chances. I'm disappointed that it has taken a global pandemic for lessons to be learned, but the notorious underfunding and understaffing of our schools have compounded issues for the reopening of schools, and we can't ignore it anymore. All that we've seen over the last couple of months is a crystallisation of realities that existed long before then. We cannot continue to expect education to solve societal ills, to provide opportunity, to be a magic bullet if we continuously underfund it, pass on the cost onto families and then just leave and pretend that everything is okay. I do acknowledge the recent work to reduce classroom sizes by the previous government, but let's just look at the facts. We've gone from an average in our primary classrooms of 24.9 in 2014-2015 to 24.3 in 2018-2019. We still fall drastically short of the OECD average of 21 and the EU average of 20. With 1 in 5 primary pupils in classroom sizes of over 30, and 45% of all 3,000 plus primary schools have at least one classroom with more than 30 pupils. It is impossible to teach in a classroom of more than 30 pupils. It is doubly impossible to learn in a classroom of more than 30 students. It's just not good enough. It's never been good enough. But this is lost in the new narrative of getting back to normal that has taken root over the last few months. Reopen the schools and get back to normal. There is no normal in our education. Our classroom sizes, amongst the highest in Europe, were not normal pre-COVID-19. Pay differences between workers with the same qualifications performing the same work is not normal. This was a point that was made laughably by the Minister for Finance earlier this week, commenting on junior pay rise, saying that that wasn't normal for people to be doing the same job and getting paid differently. Imagine being a teacher, a young teacher in a school, listening to that statement from the Minister for Finance. It is laughable if it wasn't so serious and didn't have such an impact on our educators. The poor investment in education compared to our overall GDP is not normal. And while our teachers may be the highest paid in Europe, the reality is that they are also the hardest working. Primary teachers teaching an average of 905 hours per year compared to the EU average of 754, according to the OECD report Education at a Glance 2019. And this is within the most underfunded school environments. That's not a platitude. The teachers who do immense work. It is the reality, and it should never not be said enough. Normal has meant that our schools are forced to self-fundraise, to rely on relationships with local businesses to make crucial improvements and source necessary tools. It's not normal that when a school wants to pay for their heating or have hot water, that they're sending the purse around to the parents who are also struggling. That's not normal. How many times during the school closures do we hear stories of schools needing digital tools and working with local businesses to meet those needs? Schools cannot be expected to continue pulling themselves up by the bootstraps, completely unsupported by the department, and instead supported and relying on families who are already overburdened with the cost of living. There is no normal in how schools were operating pre-COVID. It was their reality, and they've managed because they've had to. But we cannot allow schools to go back to that perverse sense of normality. The priority of reducing teacher-pupil ratios cannot be overstated, and it's work that needs to be expedited. We need to make an absolute commitment, as this motion calls for, to dramatically and immediately reduce classroom sizes in Ireland, abolishing class sizes of over 30, facilitating teachers to do their job, to have better learning and teaching experiences for students, particularly those from more vulnerable backgrounds. And these smaller classroom sizes need to be maintained beyond the pandemic. The government needs to finally fall in line with the standard EU average that we do not stand with our educators and we do not stand with our students unless we meet those minimum goals. I want to touch on the announcements that was made yesterday, very welcome announcement, and I fully accept the last week that we should be positive in terms of getting our schools reopened, because that is fundamentally the most important thing. But nor should we be blinded by the realities of the challenges that's left to face our school leaders given the short proximity in the running. Minister, you provided funding for 1,000 post-primary school teachers. We have 750 post-secondary schools in this country. If there was to be a second wave, if teachers have for one reason or another to remove themselves from the classroom, that's not going to be enough. I was also talking to many of my friends in education today and asking them how are they going to manage these overflow classrooms they apparently have, and that was met with some sense of ridicule, and rightfully so, because I've been in a lot of schools over the last couple of years. I haven't seen too many overflow classrooms that are contained in the plan. The idea of turning PE calls into classrooms is one that we should oppose. PE is not only a leaving cert subject, it's absolutely essential to student well-being. Students who haven't probably, their only chance of getting exercise in a lot of situations is actually coming into school and taking part in PE, being part of team sports, having some fun. It's absolutely essential. We shouldn't be removing that opportunity from our schools. I will conclude on this. The idea of going back to normality is one that we should oppose. What we really need, and there's an opportunity now, the pandemic has accelerated a lot of different factors in Irish life, one being that we need a vision for how education can be better. What was the normality wasn't good enough. I think there's a real chance to stand forward and demonstrate leadership on this. The package that was announced yesterday is certainly welcome. What we really need now is leadership. I will touch very briefly on, and I intend to bring it up again on Thursday, our SNAs. Our SNAs are absolutely vital to the functioning of our schools and to give students with special educational needs the opportunity to be on par with other students. We need to start valuing our SNA teachers. That's ensure professionalisation of their role, ensuring the conditions within their employment are standardised across the education sphere to pay them appropriately. If we can get one thing right over the next couple of months, let's do justice to our SNAs. Thank you.